Ben Carlson is a family man with humble dreams of running a feed store and raising his children with his high school sweetheart, Nina. But when Nina becomes infatuated with the allure of city glamour, their quiet life begins to crumble. What starts as suspicion quickly spirals into a shocking revelation: infidelity, deceit, and heartbreak. Forced to choose between surrendering and seeking justice, Ben embarks on a journey that could redefine his future. Will he reclaim his peace and build a new life, or will the betrayal consume him? My dear friend, be sure to subscribe to my channel if this is your first time here, and give your royal like to this video. I'm Ben Carlson, a plain-spoken man from a rural background. My journey began with an associate degree in animal husbandry and a simple dream: to own a feed store and build a loving family. After finishing junior college, I married Nina, my high school sweetheart. Nina had been a constant in my life, and I couldn't imagine a future without her. Nina was strikingly beautiful, with dark hair and a figure that remained stunning even after we had 2 sons. I took great pride in calling her my wife, and my greatest desire was to make her happy. But there was a side of Nina that I couldn't satisfy: her yearning for a life of sophistication and luxury. She pored over society pages and subscribed to glossy magazines filled with tales of the rich and glamorous. At the dentist's office, she'd flip through car magazines and instantly recognized the most extravagant brands. Nina was attuned to high fashion and knew every designer by name. Her fascination with that world often left me feeling inadequate, unable to offer her the lifestyle she longed for. Hoping to close the gap, I took a job at an upscale feed store in Omaha that served affluent customers. The move brought us closer to the city while keeping me in a line of work I enjoyed. The job suited me, and I quickly gained a reputation for excellent customer service. My dedication even earned me some perks from the company. At first, Nina seemed satisfied with our new urban lifestyle. When she took a job, it meant our boys would go to daycare, but they adapted well. Nina joined King Medical, a company that made syringes and other medical supplies. Her office position allowed her to dress up and socialize with professionals, a change from the rural community she'd left behind. Her new job brought changes to our family dynamic. I took on more parenting and household duties, handling daycare runs, cooking, and chores. Nina took charge of the laundry, ensuring her clothes were always impeccably pressed. Despite her additional income, our savings dwindled. The money I had set aside for my dream of opening a feed store was spent on Nina's beauty appointments, manicures, and designer clothing. Conversations about money turned heated, so I stopped bringing them up. Quietly, I opened a separate savings account. Over time, Nina grew distant. She worked longer hours, made secretive phone calls, and spoke of wanting a new car, and even breast implants. I couldn't ignore the signs. I wasn't naive. I knew she was seeing someone else. At that point, I stopped trying to salvage our marriage. Instead, I resolved to uncover the truth and plan my next steps. My suspicions pointed to someone at her workplace. I confided in my co-workers, Stephen and Anthony. Though neither of them was highly educated, they were loyal and hardworking. As their supervisor, I had earned their respect, and they were willing to help. I noticed a pattern. Every Wednesday, Nina dressed more carefully, down to her lingerie. It was a clue I couldn't overlook. One Wednesday, I asked Stephen and Anthony to cover for me at work. I stationed myself near the King Medical parking lot and waited. At around 11 a.m., I saw Nina leave in her car. I followed her to a Global Inn, where she parked at one end of the lot. Shortly after, a man in a red Corvette arrived and parked at the opposite end. They met, entered a room on the first floor, and disappeared. Watching them made my stomach churn. My worst fears were confirmed, but I wasn't ready to act just yet. Before leaving, I used wire cutters to snip 2 valve stems on Nina's car tires. I left the Corvette untouched, something I later regretted. That evening, Nina casually mentioned having a flat tire and said a co-worker had helped her. She didn't elaborate, and I didn't press her. The next morning, I swung by her workplace and saw the red Corvette in a reserved spot. A sign identified the owner as Luke Ford, the distribution manager. By afternoon, I had a file's worth of information on him, courtesy of Stephen's wife, who worked in King Medical's HR department. Luke was married to a woman named Rosalie and had a history of workplace misconduct. I now had his address, phone numbers, and even his social security number, but I wasn't sure how to use it. My anger intensified with each passing day. I struggled to keep my emotions in check, often breaking down when I was alone. Living under the same roof with Nina became a torment. I didn't know my next move, but one thing was certain. I wouldn't let this betrayal define my future. I longed for it all to end. My chance arrived unexpectedly the next day, triggered by a memory of one of my most faithful customers, Addison King. She was married to the president of King Medical Company. While I'd never crossed paths with her husband, Addison and I had developed a pleasant and friendly relationship over time. I wondered if I could leverage this connection to my benefit, and decided to strike up a warm conversation with her. During our chat, her daughter Zoe, who was in her final year of veterinary school, joined us. Addison excused herself shortly after to tend to tasks in the barn, leaving Zoe and me to continue talking. For the next hour, our conversation flowed effortlessly. While I genuinely appreciated her company, I couldn't shake a subtle pang of guilt after parting ways. It didn't linger. By the weekend, I was busy in my garage, assembling a 6-inch steel plate outfitted with 4 sharp spikes made from concrete nails. This small, lethal device was the cornerstone of my plan for discreet retaliation. By Tuesday, I arrived at Addison's property with a delivery, deliberately casting a melancholy air. She noticed instantly. "Ben, you're not yourself today. What's bothering you?" she asked. I exhaled deeply, playing into her concern. "Just dealing with some personal stuff. I didn't mean to bring it here." She gestured toward her house. "Come inside for some coffee. Maybe talking will help." Her kitchen was immaculate, all stainless steel and gleaming granite, straight out of a design magazine. She set 2 steaming mugs on the counter and leaned forward. "Now tell me what's on your mind." After a pause, I decided to share. "It's my wife, Nina. She works at King Medical, and I suspect one of her superiors might be pressuring her into something inappropriate. I don't have solid proof, but last week I saw them together at the Global Inn. Nina has no idea I know. I'm torn about confronting her because I can't tell if she's a victim or if she's willingly involved. It's affecting everything, our family, our relationship. She barely acknowledges the kids or me anymore." Addison frowned deeply. "Do you know who this man is?" "I think his name is Luke Ford, but I'm not sure if they're in the same department. I've never met him." She nodded thoughtfully. "Would you like me to look into this? I can be discreet." I hesitated, then nodded. "If it could be handled quietly, I'd appreciate it. I don't want to stir up a scandal." "Leave it with me," she agreed. "I'll touch base when I deliver your oats next Thursday." Before leaving, I asked, "Is Zoe still around?" "She's gone back to school but will be home this weekend. You should bring your boys over to meet her." The suggestion lifted my spirits slightly. "That sounds nice. I'm sure Nina won't mind me taking the boys out." The next morning, the rain poured heavily as Nina meticulously prepared for her day. I watched her closely, unnoticed. After dropping the kids at daycare, I headed to work, where my team had agreed to cover my shift. My truck was set for Stephen to handle deliveries while I focused on what needed to be done. Anthony arrived with his cousin's van, and together we loaded the floor jack equipped with my steel plate. Later, I arrived at the Global Inn just as Nina parked her car. Moments later, Luke pulled up in his Corvette. They disappeared inside, and I waited. 10 minutes later, I wheeled the jack through the rain, positioning it under Luke's car. A few pumps punctured the oil pan with a satisfying pop, and the fuel tank soon followed. I swiftly returned the jack to the van, then moved to Nina's car to slash 2 valve stems. My work finished, I flicked a lit cigarette toward Luke's vehicle as I drove off. In the rearview mirror, I saw flames leap through the downpour before an explosion rocked the scene. That night, Nina returned home late. She skipped dinner and went straight to bed. I spent the evening with our boys, enjoying playtime, bath time, and bedtime rituals. I opted for the couch that night. The next morning, she remained still as I got the boys ready and left for daycare. When I returned, her car was gone. By mid-morning, as I resumed work, a police lieutenant named Jonathan Perez arrived. His demeanor was calm and friendly as he questioned my activities from the previous day. Without hesitation, I presented the meticulously documented delivery logs. He raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. "You're thorough. Do you always keep such detailed records?" I offered a faint smile. "Would you like to see logs from the last month?" He chuckled lightly, shaking his head. "No, this will do," he said, and left. It was hard to decide whether to feel alarmed or remain detached. "Can you tell me what's happening?" I asked, keeping my tone steady. He hesitated briefly, then started to explain. "Yesterday, at the Global Inn in East Omaha, someone vandalized a car. We're trying to see if anyone knows anything about it," he said carefully. "Why would you be asking me about that?" I replied, confused. He paused before continuing. "Another car parked nearby also had its valve stems cut. That car belongs to your wife. We're trying to determine if the incidents are connected or just a coincidence." For a moment, I was at a loss for words. Finally, I said, "First off, I have no clue why my wife's car was even at the Global Inn. Secondly, what does she have to do with the other car?" "The damaged vehicle belongs to one of her co-workers," he explained. "Apparently, they were meeting clients for lunch there, and the vandalism occurred while they were inside." "Have you spoken to the clients they were meeting?" I asked, growing more curious. "No," he admitted. "They couldn't remember the clients' names." Feeling my patience thinning, I leaned forward. "Are you giving me the full story, or are we just playing games here?" He gave a faint smile and leaned back in his chair. "Do you know a man named Luke Ford?" "I've never even met him," I said firmly. "That's the truth." He nodded slightly. "I believe you. I don't like being involved in personal disputes, and I'd rather not have to follow up with you again. Here's my card. Reach out if anything comes up." He extended his hand, and I shook it reluctantly. "Sorry to bother you," he said as he stood. "If there's any way I can help, just let me know." "Thanks," I muttered, "though you haven't really given me much to work with." "Figure it out," he said cryptically, then walked away. That evening, when the kids and I got home, Nina's car was already in the driveway. She was dressed casually and had dinner ready. She mentioned feeling unwell and said she'd called in sick that day. Oddly, she didn't mention anything about the events at the Global Inn, and I didn't press her on it. Later that night, she went to bed early, leaving me to handle the boys again. I ended up sleeping on the couch, as had become my routine. By morning, she was back to her usual self, preparing for work while I got the boys ready for daycare. After dropping them off, I made a detour to a clinic to request an STD test. It felt like the only way to regain some sense of control. Friday came and went without much incident, work keeping me busy. That evening, Nina was home again. During dinner, I casually mentioned taking the boys to a client's farm the next day and invited her to join us. Predictably, she declined, saying she had shopping plans. I didn't argue. At this point, her excuses didn't matter. The answer was always the same. Saturday felt like a breath of fresh air. The boys and I spent the day at the King Ranch with Zoe, one of my clients. She was wonderful with the kids, and they took to her immediately. Her sister Addison prepared an amazing lunch, and for the first time in a while, I wished the day could stretch on forever. Though Mr. King wasn't around, I didn't mind. Zoe's cheerful energy was enough. When we returned home that evening, Nina barely acknowledged us. The boys enthusiastically tried to share stories about their day, but she tuned them out until they eventually gave up. At one point, she asked why I wasn't sleeping in our bed anymore. I lied, saying work stress was keeping me up and I didn't want to disturb her. She didn't press the issue further. The following week passed without much incident, though I began noticing small changes in her behavior. On her so-called special day, however, something shifted. She didn't follow her usual morning routine and didn't bother dressing up, suggesting her plans had fallen through. I didn't mind. I had my own errands to run. That day, I visited a divorce lawyer who handed me a stack of brochures and fill-in-the-blank forms. The thought of starting over didn't seem as overwhelming anymore. When Wednesday arrived, Nina was up early, showering and carefully styling her hair. She had new black lingerie, a fresh perfume, and a pair of unfamiliar shoes. The signs were obvious. Today was another date day. I kept my observations to myself and left with the boys as usual. After dropping them off, I took a detour to a location where I knew a certain Porsche Boxster would be parked. Sure enough, it was there. I jotted down the license plate number before heading to work. My co-workers, sensing my mood, shared my curiosity about this new turn of events. We finished our morning deliveries unusually fast, bending a few rules to carve out extra time. Freddie, one of the guys, picked up 2 large bottles of hydrochloric acid from a supply store. Meanwhile, I kept Jonathan Perez, an acquaintance of mine, distracted over lunch. I brought pulled pork sandwiches, fries, and Cokes to his office, engaging in casual conversation. Freddie had a more hands-on task. At the Global Inn, he located the Porsche and meticulously poured acid across its trunk, fenders, and convertible top. The leather interior wasn't spared, and as a final touch, he added mothballs to the gas tank, ensuring a devastating chemical reaction. He even slashed the valve stems on Nina's car again. The entire job took less than 15 minutes. Back at lunch, Jonathan eventually grew suspicious. "What's going on?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. "Just covering my bases," I said casually, "in case anything happens to Luke Ford's car today." "And what's so special about today?" he asked, clearly intrigued. I smirked. "The pulled pork is on special." Then I excused myself to call the daycare. "Hi, Carol. This is Ben Carlson. I've got a packed schedule this afternoon, and I was hoping you could contact Nina to see if she'd be able to pick up the boys. I'd be really grateful if you could handle this for me. You can reach her at 874-3211, extension 119. You may need to ask for her by name. If possible, please try to call her quickly so you can catch her in time. Thanks a lot." Jonathan leaned back in his chair, a satisfied grin on his face. "Wow, those pork sandwiches really hit the spot," he said. A brief silence filled the room before he broke it again. "Think I should give Mr. Ford a call about his car?" "Why would you even consider that?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Do you have his number on hand?" I handed over Mr. Ford's mobile number and the contact for room 119 at the Global Inn. Jonathan smirked and decided to call the hotel, setting the phone to speaker mode. After a few rings, Luke Ford's slightly out-of-breath voice answered. "Hello? Who's calling?" "Mr. Ford, this is Detective Perez," Jonathan said, his tone dripping with authority. "I'm just touching base to let you know we still haven't found any leads on the incident with your car." "How did you get this number? Why are you bothering me here?" Ford retorted, irritation clear in his voice. "Mr. Ford, I'm a detective. It's my job," Jonathan replied smoothly. "By the way, did you manage to get a replacement vehicle?" "Yes, I did," Ford answered cautiously. "Why are you asking?" "Just ensuring there hasn't been another issue. Is the car with you now?" "Yes, it's parked outside." "Is everything all right with it?" Ford hesitated. "Hang on, I'll check." The sound of muffled muttering followed, then a startled squawk and a groan. When Ford returned to the line, his tone was grim. "Something doesn't seem right. I need to step outside and take a closer look. I'll call you back." "Understood," Jonathan said, adding with feigned curiosity. "But Mr. Ford, why aren't you dressed?" "That's none of your damn business," Ford snapped before abruptly ending the call. Jonathan turned to me, triumphant. "Happy now?" "Completely," I said, "but I've got to get back to work. Let me know if anything comes up." "Maybe we can grab lunch next week," Jonathan suggested with a grin. "Let's hope not," I muttered as I left. I was determined to see this mess resolved before things spiraled further out of control. Back at work, Stephen had meticulously organized the logs, and Freddie had discreetly taken care of the acid bottles. That evening at home, Nina had picked up the boys but headed straight to bed without a word. The following morning, Jonathan stopped by with an update. Ford's new car was completely totaled. The insurance issues stemming from the Corvette disaster were still unresolved, leaving Ford shelled out over $600,000. Despite Jonathan's insistence that I was with him during the incident, Ford was convinced I was somehow involved. Jonathan likely knew better but seemed in no rush to find evidence to clear me. Meanwhile, Nina had been suspiciously getting her tires fixed frequently. She avoided explanations, and I decided it was time to put an end to this chaos. My STD results came back clean, and I'd initiated the divorce process. I planned a weekend trip with the boys to King's Ranch. If Zoe was there, great. If not, we'd enjoy some time with Addison. The weekend was wonderful. Zoe was there, and the boys were ecstatic around her. For the first time in a long while, we felt like a real family again. Zoe didn't pry into the turmoil in my life, and I was grateful for her understanding. As we were leaving, Addison gave me a knowing wink and assured me that things would fall into place. Soon after, a surprising job opportunity arose: better pay, greater prospects, and even a potential ownership stake. The only downside was the location, 100 miles away, which would put more distance between us and Zoe. By Wednesday, Nina was back to her usual antics, dressing up for what I assumed were her ongoing rendezvous. Though I didn't have a concrete plan, I knew something had to change. That afternoon, Addison King showed up unexpectedly and motioned for me to join her in her car. She drove us to the plant and led me through a private entrance into Mr. King's office. After introductions, we were served coffee by his secretary. Eventually, I broke the small talk. "Why am I here?" Mr. King chuckled. "We're wrapping this up today. Addison has kept me in the loop, and I've done my own digging. By the end of the day, everything will be in place." He paused, offering a small smile. "If this causes you any embarrassment, Ben, I apologize. That's not my intention." We continued chatting, and Addison caught me smiling whenever Zoe came up. Subtlety wasn't my strong suit, but I didn't care. When the phone finally rang, everyone went still. "What's the status?" Mr. King asked. "All right, thanks for the update. You know what to do now." He turned to me with a satisfied expression. "It's all set. Let's get this moving." Luke and his wife found themselves in their familiar room at the Global Inn, a setting that had become routine for them. Luke had arrived in a company Mercedes, a direct breach of company policy. The car was already being returned to the plant, but the situation hinted at deeper troubles. His wife, figuratively and literally, seemed to have her own set of flat tires. The events unfolded with an air of predictability. Luke, having placed his phone on speaker, initiated a call to their room. The voice that answered was firm and professional. "Luke, this is Mr. King. I apologize for the intrusion, but there's an urgent matter we must address." Startled, Luke stumbled over his words. Yes, of course, but how did you get this number?" "That's irrelevant," Mr. King replied with a steely tone. "What matters is that the legal department has flagged a potential harassment issue. I need you to answer truthfully, Luke. Is there a female employee from the company with you in your room right now?" Luke hesitated, muffled sounds filling the background before he replied, "Yes, sir, there is." Mr. King continued without missing a beat. "I'll be direct. Is she there willingly, or has she been coerced or threatened in any way by you?" "No, sir," Luke answered swiftly. "She's here of her own free will. There's been no coercion at all." "To be clear," Mr. King pressed, "the relationship is entirely consensual?" "Yes, sir. Completely consensual," Luke confirmed emphatically. "Good. Your honesty is noted," Mr. King said. "This will help resolve the situation quickly. Now I need to verify this directly with her. Can you put her on the phone?" After some shuffling, the woman, Nina, took the call. "Sir, how can I assist you?" she asked. "Nina," Mr. King began, "did Mr. Ford in any way coerce or threaten you to be with him?" "No, sir," Nina replied firmly. "There were no threats." "And to confirm," Mr. King pressed, "this relationship is consensual, and you've not been intimidated in any way?" There was a brief pause, whispers exchanged in the background, before Nina replied, "Yes, sir, it's consensual." "Thank you for clarifying," Mr. King said. "When you and Luke return to the plant, there will be statements prepared for you both to sign. May I speak with Luke again?" Before handing the phone back, Nina asked hesitantly, "Sir, how do you know my name?" "That's not important," Mr. King said curtly. When Luke returned to the line, Mr. King directed him to head back to the plant immediately to complete the necessary paperwork, ending the call with a note of finality. Smirking, Mr. King turned to Addison. "Why don't you take Ben out for lunch and come back later? By then, the legal team should have sorted everything out." We enjoyed a peaceful lunch, during which I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Unable to contain myself, I expressed my thanks to Addison, who finally made me promise not to discuss the matter with Zoe. It felt like a step in the right direction. I also shared news of my new job offer, which she received warmly, expressing genuine happiness for me and the boys. Back at the plant, I collected notarized statements from both Luke and Nina, confirming the consensual nature of their relationship. The legal team assured me these documents would suffice for my lawyer to finalize the divorce. Both Luke and Nina were promptly terminated, their belongings packed and waiting. Lacking transportation, the consequences of their actions were immediate and severe. Addison lent me her car, which I promised to return the next day. I delivered the statements to my lawyer, who made multiple copies. One was earmarked for Luke's wife. I then headed to the bank to close joint accounts, canceled credit cards, and arranged for utilities to be disconnected by the week's end. I informed the landlord of my intent to vacate and submitted my notice at work. Anthony followed me in my truck to return Addison's car, after which it was time to pick up the boys and head home. I hesitated at the door, dreading the inevitable confrontation. Nina's car wasn't in the driveway, but inside she sat crying on the couch, a rare display of emotion. 2 boxes of her work belongings sat nearby. While the boys occupied themselves with dinner and TV, I stood silently beside her, offering her a chance to speak if she wished. She eventually broke the silence, her voice filled with bitterness. "You just couldn't let it go, could you? You had to ruin everything. Why couldn't you mind your own business? You had no right to interfere in my life." Her selfishness astonished me. Even now, she couldn't acknowledge the harm done. Not to me, not to the boys, not to Luke's wife, Rosalie. Our family and future plans were irrelevant to her. All that mattered was her immediate gratification. In that moment, I felt a profound relief. I wouldn't spend the rest of my life with someone so self-centered. Without a word, I turned and headed upstairs for a long, cleansing shower. The evening passed in quiet stillness. While I concentrated on settling the boys for the night, she retreated into the bedroom, closing the door behind her. By the next morning, I had the boys with me at work, ensuring everything stayed on track and guiding Stephen and Anthony to follow the system I had carefully structured. Later, we made a few stops to collect moving boxes from local stores. Driving past the Global Inn, I noticed her car was gone, likely repaired by now. Her recent flat tire mishap must have put a noticeable strain on her budget last month. When we got back home, she wasn't there. We focused on packing only essentials, clothes and toys, leaving the rest for her to deal with. By the next day, the utilities would be disconnected, something she wasn't aware of. As we reversed out of the driveway, her car pulled in. She stood silently by her vehicle, watching us drive away without a word. That evening, I took the boys to Chuck E. Cheese for some fun, and we spent the night at a motel. The following morning, I dropped them off at daycare. Before leaving, I handed Carol some cookies and party favors, explaining that it was the boys' last day, and I wanted them to enjoy a special time with their friends. Just before I walked out, she stopped me with a hesitant question. "What happened with your wife last week? I wasn't going to ask, but now that you're leaving, I'm curious. She was so angry when I called." Carol explained how Nina had interrogated her about how she had my number, and when Carol admitted I had given it to her, Nina flew into a rage, hurling curses. Although Nina had said nothing when she picked up the boys, her fury had been evident. I sighed heavily. "Sorry, Carol. I used you as part of a plan. Nina's been having an affair. She was staying at the Global Inn with her boyfriend, and I thought your call might disrupt their plans, make her think twice. It backfired. It just made her angry at both of us. I'm serving her divorce papers today, and the boys and I are moving for a new job. I'm sorry for dragging you into this." Later, I met with my lawyer, who had finalized everything. Custody of the boys was granted to me, while Nina retained visitation rights, though I doubted she would take advantage of them. Our limited assets were split evenly. There wasn't much to divide. There would be no financial support exchanged between us. I left her all the household furniture and items I had no use for. She kept her car, the same one that had been plagued by frequent flat tires. All that remained was serving her the divorce papers. If uncontested, It would all be final in 3 months. Included in the documents was a notarized statement from Luke and Nina, accompanied by a note from my lawyer clarifying that the statements would remain confidential if the terms were accepted. Sitting in the driveway, I stared at the house, memories flooding back. I had loved Nina deeply. She was the only woman I had ever truly let into my heart. I had believed everything in our relationship was normal, unaware that I was falling short of her expectations. She had never communicated her unhappiness, leaving me blind to her dissatisfaction. Gathering my resolve, I knocked on the door. She opened it, looking drained. "Want something to drink?" she asked casually. I handed her the papers, and she stared at them for a moment before meeting my gaze. "Why?" I finally asked, hoping for an answer in her expression. Her reply was sharp and brutally honest. "He smelled like aftershave. You smelled like fertilizer. He wore Armani. You wore jeans. He ate lobster and steak. You ate ribs and burgers. He drove a sleek car. You had a truck. His nails were manicured. Yours were dirty. He had a career. You were just a farm boy. Need more?" I could keep going. She continued, her tone unwavering. "I wanted a life you couldn't provide. I'm sorry I married you, Ben. I did it to escape my parents, not because I thought about what kind of life I wanted. I regret it. I regret having the kids. That's awful, I know, but I've never felt like a mother. I kept chasing dreams, thinking they'd fill the emptiness, but they didn't. I misled you, and I'm sorry for that. But I'm not sorry for wanting something better." I pushed further. "What about his wife? Your husband? Our kids? What about your family?" Her demeanor shifted, her remorse giving way to defiance. "I don't care about any of that. This is my chance to live the life I've dreamed of. A farm boy husband and 2 messy kids don't fit into that picture. I have the papers. Now go, so I can move on." Her words made it easier to walk away. I picked up the boys and thanked Carol for her help. "Let me know if you ever need me to make more calls," she said kindly. I decided to extend the utilities until the end of the month to give Nina some breathing room to adjust. Then, I closed that chapter of my life for good. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for her situation. The divorce wrapped up in just 3 months, and from Nina, there was nothing. No calls, no messages, no parting words. The lawyer assured me that everything had gone smoothly, without any complications. My new job was steady and promising, but I had missed a golden chance, purchasing the business. Someone else had swooped in and sealed the deal, which included a prime section of land as part of the package. I later learned that the new owner planned to transform the property into a horse breeding operation. Though my role at work remained solid, my ambition of owning my own business would have to wait. A couple of weeks after that disappointment, construction began next to the feed store. Speculation ran wild as everyone tried to guess what the new development might be. One of the guys eventually took it upon himself to ask the engineer on site what was being built. The answer? A large animal veterinary clinic. It piqued my interest, but I didn't dwell on it much. The construction moved quickly, and in less than 2 months, the building was finished. The new owner was set to arrive that Saturday. While heading out for lunch that day, the boys and I decided to swing by the new clinic for a quick look. Curiosity got the better of us. Suddenly the boys started shouting, "Zoe! Zoe!" Sure enough, it was her, Zoe, looking more vibrant and confident than ever. Addison was there with her as well. As it turned out, Zoe had earned her veterinary degree and was embarking on an ambitious venture, managing a large animal clinic while also breeding and raising show horses. She graciously gave the boys a tour of her state-of-the-art facility, while Addison and I caught up on life. Over lunch, Zoe laid out her future plans, including building a home on the property so she could live close to her work. The boys and I couldn't stop smiling on the ride home. Fast forward 5 years, and Zoe was thriving. Her show horses were breathtaking, and her veterinary clinic had grown into a booming success. Meanwhile, I had expanded my business, opening a 6th feed store. The boys had since welcomed 2 younger sisters into the family, whom they absolutely adored. Weekends had become a family affair, with my mother-in-law Addison and even Mr. King dropping by. To this day, I've never discovered Mr. King's first name. As for Nina, she never came back into the boys' lives. And so, This chapter of the story comes to a close. Did things unfold as you expected, or were there twists you didn't see coming? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a like. If you're new here or haven't subscribed yet, this is the perfect time to join us. I share fresh, captivating stories every day, so hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss out. Thanks for reading, and I'll see you in the next one. My friend, and this is the end of the story. If you liked this story, then put your royal like and subscribe to the channel. May the force be with you.